With every good story, you typically need a character capable of serving as an obstacle for the main character. This whole dynamic helps in the progression of the story, to which such a character is called an antagonist, one who might not necessarily be a villain. So then, what is a villain? A villain is defined as an evil or wicked character that enacts evil action and or harms others. A villain may have justification for their actions that is in line with their own principles, but their actions inflict harm and create ruin in the process. So, by this definition, we can understand that Death in his own right was capable of affecting and changing the main character, being Puss, also being a huge catalyst for the story, in that he gave Puss a huge reason to search for the last wish. But all in all, he still wants to inflict harm and evil action on the main character. This in turn justifies him being a villain, even though he is the depiction of an almighty phenomenon. But when you draw it to a screenwriting point of view, he is a villain. Now, I want to clarify things. There is this back and forth between using the term antagonist and villains interchangeably. By definition, an antagonist is the force of a story that the protagonist contends with, whether it be human, natural, or supernatural. Through this definition, we can make out that an antagonist does not have to be a villain, but just an obstacle used to contend with the main character. An example is Metro Man from Megamind. By the way, Megamind has one of the best screenwriting when it comes to seamlessly switching the roles different character plays on screen. Now, Metro Man is not just an antagonist, but a hero antagonist, one who acts as an obstacle, but his actions are heroic. This role is because at the beginning of the movie, Megamind is acting as a villain protagonist. As we can see, the roles just depend on who the story is following. A good example of a typical antagonist is Anton Ego from Ratatouille, where he serves as a primary obstacle for Remy to overcome. Now that I've bored you with all this information, we can take out that a villain can be a protagonist or an antagonist, and also the antagonist of a story does not have to be a villain. So the first of my 4 top villains I want to talk about is Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. By the way, I am not ranking any of these characters. Each character is unique in their own way, so I don't want to rank them. Tai Lung has the most robust character arc when compared to any of the villains in this video. He has a story that does not come off pretentious, but all in all believable and relatable, which almost makes me sympathize with the character. It's very easy for me to blame Shifu for Tai Lung's later actions. Shifu was a proud father who fed Tai Lung's longing for greatness. Ever since Tai Lung showed a little bit of prowess in martial arts, Shifu led him on. And rightly so. If your child shows huge interest in something, why not try to make him the best at it? But by doing so, Shifu created a monster that did not want to stop until he had gained it all. Who can blame Tai Lung for running wild and wanting the Dragon Scroll, to which wonderful father Shifu has trained him for? Who can blame a child that has worked all his life for his dreams, and when it looks like he can reach it, it's snatched right off from him? A child that wanted his father to always be proud of him. In fact, I might go on to say that Tai Lung's rampage might not have been fully based on the fact that he wanted the Dragon Scroll, but might be partly based on the rage he felt when his father betrayed him. For me, this story is very powerful, one that I don't think most modern day villains could top. Now, a good villain is not necessarily supposed to feel relatable. I think what makes a great villain is when you can't feel any sort of connection towards that character. But Tai Lung has the ability to make me feel sympathy when analyzing him. This is not to say the things he did were justified. Make no mistake, he is well aware of what he's doing. After all, Shifu did train him. Something I find so intriguing is Tai Lung is the only person Shifu taught with so much love and affection poured into it, with Shifu ultimately hyping him up for greatness. At the end of the day, he ended up the way he is. While you have the Furious 5, to which Shifu approached differently, with less of that compassion he gave to Tai Lung. This can raise the question that if Shifu had not led Tai Lung as much as he did, but strictly taught him martial arts, he probably wouldn't have gone on a rampage when he heard that he was not worthy of the scrolls, similar to the Furious 5's reaction when Po became the Dragon Warrior. Well, that's just what I think. You guys can answer it better in the comment section. By the way, if you like the content, please do subscribe and like. We are currently on our way to 1K subs. That is pretty amazing, honestly. Let's get back into it. Now then, none of these relatable tropes can be said about my next villain, who takes us all the way back to 1996. This is Frollo from the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now before I get into talking about Frollo, I want to point out that Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame is not an accurate representation of Victor Hugo's book. This is Disney's own take on it. And yes, it does not do it justice, but I still like the movie on its own. So I won't be referencing Hugo's book when I'm talking about Frollo. There's a phrase I have to bring up when speaking about Frollo, and that is hero-villain dynamic. This term refers to the relationship a hero and villain share that helps propagate the story. And if this is done right, we as an audience are left with memorable dialogues and stronger connections to these characters. In my opinion, the hero-villain dynamic Quasi and Frollo share is one that is very unique. This is a hugely abusive relationship, one where one party wants so much control over the other, he diminishes every ounce of confidence in the other party, making the other party so entrapped that though he feels like he's being subjugated, his mind is hell-bent that no one else is capable of loving him except Frollo. To domineer someone this much, you need to know and prey on their weaknesses. You need to kill off any iota of confidence that person may have about a certain concept at an immature or early stage. This is how most abusive relationships are being formed in our current day lives. All this I've said, Frollo does to absolute perfection, even tricking me. At a point in the movie, I actually had this notion that Frollo cares for Quasi, and in a sense, he is right when he says that the world won't love Quasi. But as the movie progressed, I understood that Frollo has no redeemable qualities. He is a control freak, one who will do anything to administer control. I think Frollo gained pleasure from being autocratic, and he gained that feeling of control easily from Quasi. But when Quasi showed a bit of independence and was ultimately mocked and shamed, Frollo did nothing to help him. In his own eyes, Quasi needs to learn that he is Quasi's best option. Frollo is a villain that is downright evil. Taking away the whole Quasimodo relationship, Frollo seems to be blinded by his own principles of righteousness. He fails to see the sin that is within him. This kind of villains are the scariest, to be honest. Villains that genuinely believe that what they are doing is good, even though it's clearly evil. Like when Frollo killed Quasi's mother, there was no glimmer of guilt from him, but more confidence that he has done the world a favor. To be honest, this approach to writing a villain I find very interesting and unique. Frollo might slightly be similar to Titan, who I'm about to talk about next, whereby you have a villain that does not have any redeemable qualities at all, which alienates audiences from trying to relate to such a character, but pushes audiences to feel more connected with the protagonist. Now, I will say this, I find Frollo to be the scariest villain. He's not a phenomenon, he's not supernatural, neither does he have any power, but it's just down to his spontaneity. A villain who is smart, cunning, and one who feels like everything he does is supposed to be right. For me, that seems very scary, because there is no limit or sense of principles that guides that character. Now then, speaking about no sense of principles, let's transition to the next villain, that is Titan from Megamind. Now, Titan is what I would call a man-child. If a child has its eyes on something, the child tries everything to get it, and if that child cannot obtain that thing, the child throws a fit. And if you've watched the movie, you pretty much understand why I say so. Titan has no reason to act as a villain. One might argue that Roxanne not reciprocating his feelings could have caused it, but I don't think so. Titan felt like he was entitled to Roxanne's feelings because he was a superhero. That for some reason, Roxanne will fall head over heels because he is the stupid version of Captain America. But he failed to see that Roxanne was a breathing human being who had her own mind and could make decisions for herself. She is not some NPC character that you obtain when you pass peculiar requirements in a video game, which I'm sure he clearly thought she was when he was playing with her life like a true toy. Now, the reason why I put Titan on this list is because of his utter immaturity and disregard to use any of his brain cells. As you all know, I love unique characters, and I think Titan stands out because of his utter stupidity. Like most villains, because when they chase the protagonist, they don't just give up, they find the fastest way to get what they want. But Titan literally stopped and decided to just destroy the city because he felt like it. And when Roxanne came to plead with him, that's when he saw an opportunity to lure Megamind out. When that should have been the first thing any villain is supposed to do. Like, come on, use the main character's weakness. But my boy Titan decided to write out his name with his laser beam eyes. By the way, while I was doing my research for this video, I was stuck on whether I can classify Megamind as a villain. There is no doubt about it, he is the protagonist, but he does act like a villain for a good part of the movie. Yes, I know the creators of the movie said he has no ill intent, and I do believe that Megamind has a good heart, but he does cause problems in the city, and he did want to kill Metro Man, even though he did say he never thought any of his plans could work. So I don't know where to classify Megamind, to be honest. I could easily say at the end of the day he's supposed to be the hero of the story, but I don't know. I just feel like he's such a layered character that it would be an injustice to just say he's a hero. Now then, unlike Megamind, there is no confusion about the last villain I will talk about in this video, and that is Syndrome from The Incredibles. Now Syndrome is highly polarizing to me. On one hand, he is relatable, but on the other hand, he's a psychopath, sociopath, egomaniac, and mechanical genius. Now then, let me build on that. Almost everyone on Earth has experienced a form of Syndrome's account of his past, being broken down and told you cannot become something, or not being encouraged in doing something that you loved, and then you aspire to grow up to prove people wrong. With hard work and perseverance, you reach that point where you can look at everyone that doubted you and say, I told you so. But there is a difference with what I just said and with what Syndrome experienced. He interrupted Mr. Incredible while he was on a job fighting crime. For some reason, Mr. Incredible telling him to go away so as to keep him safe somehow became a justification for him to be a villain. The movie explains Syndrome always thought the reason he was rejected was because he had no powers. He failed to see he was infringing on Mr. Incredible's ability to do his job. For me, Syndrome is a villain who is blinded by his own ego and pride, which dictated him to become a sociopath. One who created wealth from what he did best and grew from a boy tinkering with gadgets to selling weapons. Syndrome's concept for becoming a hero were not born out of virtues, but more of vice. One who stemmed out of his own ego, so much so he justifies his continuous path into murdering retired superheroes. Now, the one thing that stood out for me with Syndrome was one of the statements he made about making everyone have access to superpowers so as to make no one special. I kinda get where he's coming from. Why does someone that looks just the same as any other person have the power to do things that ordinary people cannot do? The concept of special human beings, in a sense, it's not fair. If I try to understand Syndrome, it's more like he feels that everyone deserves to stand on the same playing field when it comes to life. If that plot point was his main driving force for his actions, to me, that would make a very layered villain. So then, why is he in my top villains? To be honest, I just wanted to complain about him. I did have a plan for my fourth villain to be Shen, but I had to change it last minute because I already analyzed Tai Lung. I did not want two villains of the same movie. With that being said, let's segue to my honorable mentions of villains, which are top villains that I would have talked about if I had that much energy and time to make a very long video. We have Shen, Scar, Jafar, Ramses, Lord Farquaad, Death, and probably Megamind. That's if he is a villain, cause I'm not sure where to classify him. That's it. Hope you guys were able to understand different terms relating to villains and also maybe understand how I look at characters personally. I want to say thank you to everyone for your utmost support to this channel. If you have not subscribed or liked the video, please do so. It always helps the channel out. And yeah, God loves you and I love you too. Bye bye.